Hello, can you hear me? Happy Sunday, everyone. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, say hello in the comments. So I'm saying hello in the comment section as well. If you can hear me, hello, 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 hello. Happy Sunday to you, my special brother. My special brother, thank you for joining me this Sunday. I really appreciate your support. Like, it's top notch. This support is top notch, you know. So, yeah, please, wherever you are, just say hello to me from wherever you are, and then we won't waste time. We will start the session. We won't waste so much time. Okay, I can see a lot of people. Akinyemi, happy Sunday. Dara, happy Sunday. Anoja Presh, happy Sunday. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining me. I'm saying us as if I have another guest. Don't mind me. Rena, thank you. Afolake, thank you for joining me. Radiant, thank you for joining me. Anne, thank you for joining me. Akinyemi from Lindsay, Ontario, thank you for joining me. Kemolala, I thank you for joining me. Amen. Yes, coming soon to Manitoba. We pray so. Amen. Abisola, thank you for joining me. Dowu, thank you for joining me. Chibuzo, thank you for joining me. Thank you so much for joining me. Ayorinde, thank you for joining me today. Okay, so I've said so many thank you. I wouldn't waste so much time. I would just give a brief summary of, yay, Tabitokpe, welcome to Canada. So you're in Calgary, welcome. I love Calgary. Everybody's rushing to Alberta these days. Hopefully, maybe one of these days I will just relocate to Alberta, but I don't like the cold. Okay. All right. Olaolu from the UK. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Adesola, Stemika, Win TV, Okunade. Thank you so much for joining me. Okay, so I won't waste so much of your time today. I'll just go straight to the program why we are here today, which is the Caregiver program. I feel that this video is important because there's been a lot of miscommunication outside, and this video will help people gain clarity, so that, although I've already done a video, I did a video. I said people should not get hyped about it until the details are out. But it's important that we still talk about it. And then if you have your questions, I will also take your questions as well. Romeo Banco, thank you for joining me as well. Yeah, so I wouldn't waste so much time about this session, so that we can go straight to answering questions after I must have given the summary. And what I want to talk about is just that the Caregiver immigration program has actually, over the years, has had a lot of issues over the years. Like, over the years, if there's one immigration program that has had so much issues, so much complaints, is the Caregiver program. And there have been a lot of backlogs from previous program that has, you know, transitioned into the past programs that has now closed. And there are still people from those previous programs, like there have been previous programs and then the last program, and then we now have another program that they want to announce again. So there have been people that have been waiting from the previous to the last to this particular one, and a lot of backlogs. A lot of people have been in the processing, they've been processing their PR applications for some time, and many people have not been able to get their PR. So the last one, when they launched the last one, initially they said that you must at least have 24 months work experience. That was what they said initially. And you must have had the experience within Canada. So what they typically do, or what they did for the last one, was that they will open the portal on January 1 of every year, and then people would apply. And people that apply, they will give them work permit to come into Canada. With the work permit, you must gain at least 2 years work experience inside Canada. After you've gained that experience, before you will now submit your application for permanent residence. And then they now saw that there were still issues. They reduced the number of years of work or months of work experience from 24 months to 12 months, and then also reduced it further to 6 months. So it means that there were people that were already in Canada waiting to apply for their PR before they even closed the pathway, right? So now that they've closed it and they now introduced a new one, they've now provided more details about how the new one will be like. Whether the people who were part of the last one who could not gain their PR will now be transitioned into this new one, we do not know. So, like I said, this particular immigration program has had a lot of issues, and there have been lots of backlogs, with a lot of people complaining, because some people will come in as caregivers and then they will complain that, oh, my employer has been abusing me. Because of that, I could not gain the required number of years of work experience or months of work experience for me to qualify for PR. And then they will not apply for open work permit. From the open work permit, they have to look for another employer. In most cases, they even do something else besides the caregiving, right? So, like I said, a lot of issues has actually taken place because of this caregiver pathway. So, just to explain further, there are two options. You have the child caregiver, and then you have the home support worker program. The child caregiver is for people, individual families looking for caregivers, child caregivers like nannies, to come and help them take care of their children in their home. That's the child caregiver. That's the 44, I think tier code 44100. Then you have the support worker 44101, where people who have serious medical issues or have some form of disabilities, and are in their houses, they need full-time support in their houses. That's the home support worker program. So those are the two programs that are eligible for this caregiver pathway. So with that being said, the number of allotments as at last year, or as at last year, was about 2,750 slots per category. So for the home support worker program, you have 2,750 slots. And then for the home child caregiver program, we also have 2,750 slots, which makes it about 5,500 slots. So it means that for this year, especially with the fact that IRCC has reduced provincial nomination slots and reduced other immigration pathways, there's a possibility that they will also reduce the allotments for caregiver program for this year. So I want you to take note of that, because a lot of people feel that if they are not eligible for all the other immigration programs, they could be eligible for the caregiver program. And that is why a lot of people are, getting excited about this pathway and wanting to take advantage of this pathway, because number one, the requirement is very, very low. The CLB4, anybody can easily get a CLB4 in the language results. Maybe IELTS or CELPIP, anybody can get CLB4. And then you also have educational requirements, which is very low, as in secondary school educational qualification is enough for you to go through this pathway. And then the work experience requirement is very low, like 6 months work experience within the last 3 years, right? 6 months work experience within the last 3 years is also enough for you to, get PR through this pathway as well. So because of the requirements being low, a lot of people are hoping that they could use this pathway to gain PR status. And there is no age requirement for this pathway as well. Anybody who is 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, I feel 70 years is too old. 70 years is too old. But there's no age limit to this pathway. So everybody is looking towards getting their PR through this pathway. And even students in Canada, a lot of people are have been asking me questions. Oh, I'm a student. Can I go through this pathway as well? I've been working as a support worker. Is it possible? Now, on the IRCC guide, it specifically says that any work experience you've had as a student is not eligible for this pathway. So if you're a student in this session, this live session now, as long as the old requirements still exist, they've not provided details about the new requirements and the new eligibility criteria. I'm talking based on the old eligibility criteria, right? Now, as long as the old eligibility criteria still exists, it says that work experience you gained as a student does not qualify for this pathway. It means that you must have finished your program, you must have been working. And if you are working for an individual, you qualify. Like in this category, you qualify. If you're working for homes, although they've not provided more details about people who were working for homes and all of that, right? They qualify. So that's just the summary of what is obtainable. Now, in terms of, for people who are outside Canada wondering, okay, so if I meet the requirement of language scores, if I meet the requirement of 6 months work experience, if I meet the requirement of education, what else do I need? Of course, you need a job offer, because the major thing there is a job offer. Now, where you get the job offer is also important. If you get the job offer from an individual, right? If you get the job offer of working for an individual from one person, then you are eligible for this pathway. They have not made the announcement on people working for companies. They have not provided details concerning that. So I am not in the right position to talk about those who have gotten job offers from companies. So if you are, having conversations with people and say, oh, just go get a caregiver job, and a company is offering you the caregiver job, you have to be very careful, because they've not provided more details about people who will be working for companies. So if your offer is from a company, you just have to exercise patience until they make the announcement, right? Until they provide more details on who is eligible. But if your job offer is from an individual, from, let's say, Mr. and Mrs. Lagbaja, Mr. and Mrs. Lagbaja, they have maybe a child that is 17 years old that has been suffering from cerebral palsy and has a lot of medical issues, and they want somebody to come and provide support for them in their house, then you qualify for this pathway. But if your job offer is from a company, Mr. Lagbaja Limited or Mr. and Mrs. Trudeau Company Limited, you have to wait until they make the announcement on whether you qualify or you are eligible for this pathway. So the only thing I can advise you is focus on getting a job offer from an individual. Focus on getting a job offer from an individual. Like I said, an individual will help you qualify. But if you're getting a job offer from a company, you have to wait until they make the details clear, until they publish it and say, okay, people who get job offers from a company and are A, B, C, D, E, then you qualify, before you can put your mind at rest to say, okay, you actually qualify for this pathway. So that's what I can say. Then in terms of the documents you should prepare, there are lots of documents you should prepare for yourself, apart from the language results that I mentioned, apart from the work experience. Now, the work experience is also critical, because, of course, you have to provide a reference letter. I'm talking about you as the applicant now. I'll talk about what the employer needs to provide for you. Now, for you as the applicant, your language result, of course, should meet a CLB4, your work reference, your reference letter from your employer. Now, when I mean reference letter from your employer, of course, you're saying that you've been working as a caregiver, right? If you've been working as a caregiver, you should be able to provide a reference letter from your employer. Your reference letter should be on the employer's letterhead. They should state how many hours you've worked. They should state how much you earn. They should state if you are working part-time, you do not qualify. It must be full-time, 6 months work experience. You must have had at least 6 months full-time work experience. If your experience was part-time, was casual, you do not qualify. So on your reference letter, it must state that you have gotten at least 6 months full-time work experience, minimum of 30 hours per week, right? And then what you earn and then your job description must also align with the tier code, either 44101 or 44100. So these are the details that you need to get for yourself. And then for your, of course, you have to have your passport, your valid passport as well. You also need to must have had evaluated your credentials, right? You must have evaluated your credentials as well. And then educational qualification aligning. This is one part that a lot of people get confused in. So let's say you're working as a support worker. You've been providing support to someone and you do not have any training, in that field. It will be suspicious. You yourself, you should know it will be suspicious to the visa officers, right? You should have at least trainings, certificates to show that you have done something in providing support for people. If it is a child caregiver, you don't typically need a qualification in that area, but then at least if you have a certificate, there are so many schools online, there are so many schools even in Nigeria, wherever, that provide certificate for childcare. And first aid, CPR, these documents, they are critical to show that at least you have experience in this field. Apart from the reference letter that your employer is going to provide, your first aid, your CPR certificates as well, and then maybe training certificates in childcare. I know I'm not endorsing them, but I know there's one organization in Nigeria that does a lot of trainings on childcare. They're called Nanny Academy. They didn't pay me for anything, so I'm just mentioning their name because I know a lot of people that have gone through those their educational trainings, right, just to get a document to show that they can work as child caregivers. And then if you've worked for an individual, right, as a child care provider, if you've worked as maybe an executive, because there are a lot of people that do this job in Nigeria as well. They do it for high net worth individuals, like they provide nanny for high net worth individuals. And if you're working for an individual, you qualify as well, as long as the individual is somebody that can provide necessary documents and information and is well known. For instance, if they Google somebody like Davido, right, they know that Davido is capable of having a nanny or a child care provider in his house. So if you're working for somebody like Davido can give you a reference letter, and then you show proof of employment from this employer. That also makes you eligible to apply for the child caregiver pathway. So I'm just giving you examples and documents you should provide as well. So either personal support worker or child caregiver, either of the two, at least you should have training certificates to show. It could be from any organization as well. Training certificates that makes you more competent in the field. Like I said, for child caregiver, you should have your first aid, your CPR training. Same thing for support worker as well. There are lots of certificates, how to provide medication, how to, I know for the one that you have to give injections and all of that, you must have done at least an advanced level of personal support worker training, kind of, for you to show that. If you have that, that's fine for you. But if you don't have that, at least show some educational qualifications or educational certificates that you have gotten from various organizations to support your experience, your work experience. So you could be working, you could get your ECA evaluated. Let's say you studied business administration. Your business administration qualification can be evaluated by WES, right? But in addition to your business administration credential, at least get a certificate to show that you have the competence to work as a personal support worker or a child caregiver. Okay, so that is the summary of this pathway for the applicant. Now, for the employers, they are not giving you a job offer as per letter of job offer. There is a form that the employer will fill, right? There's a form that the employer will fill. And because they are, RCC is changing what is obtainable as per this pathway, I cannot just tell you this is the form so that you don't go and hold on to that form. No, I would rather wait until when IRCC makes more provides more details for me to say, okay, this is the form that IRCC that is eligible for the employer to fill, right? So for now, I'm not going to tell you this is the form, but just take it from me that it is not an employer writing a letter of offer or a job offer and say, this is your offer of employment. No, it's actually a form on IRCC website that the employer must fill. And that is the form, that is the employment form that you would use to apply when the application is open. But like I said, because of the changes going on, I'm not going to show you the form yet until the changes are effected. When the changes have been effected, then I will say, okay, this is the form that you need or that your employer needs to fill. Because if I give you something that is old, that is outdated, I am doing you bad. And I don't want to be the person that will now go and spoil your application for you, right? So please take it from me that it is not an employer writing an offer of employment. No, it has nothing to do with that. It's a form that the employer must fill. And then for the employer part as well, like as per individual employers, they must meet a certain threshold. Although low-income earners can also apply, but they also look at your family composition. What I mean by family composition, they look at the number of families, that's how many people are in the family. Father, mother, how many children? Does this family have 3 children? How much are they earning? They also look at the factors around the family. Are both parents working? If both parents are working, yes. They also look at, okay, if one parent is working and maybe the other parent is not working but schooling, right? One parent is working and then another parent is schooling. But the one parent that is working has enough money that can also cater for the family and at the same time pay somebody. Because if a family is, maybe one parent is working and just earning about $50,000 and then they have 3 children below 5, and then the wife is not working, it does not make any sense to hire a caregiver. I hope you get my point. It doesn't make any sense to hire a caregiver when one person is working, the wife is not working, they have 3 children below 5 years old. They'll say if the wife is not working, then the wife can take care of the children. But in the situation where maybe one person is working, is earning above, let's say 100,000, maybe 150,000 thereabouts, the wife is not working, but the wife is going to school. Please note this, the wife is going to school full-time, a full-time student, right? The wife is a full-time student and the husband is working, earning above 100, 150, $200,000. They look at the family composition, they look at how much they are earning. Can they be able to pay a child caregiver, let's say $15 per hour to take care of 3 children? They look at all these factors as well. I'm talking based on the assessment of the visa officer right now. So if you're looking for a job offer, especially those of you who are looking for a job offer, you have to, find out these details from the person who is giving you a job offer. I know not everybody would want to tell you how much they are earning. A lot of people will say, oh, I can do it for you, I can do it for you. But you have to find out how much are they earning so that you know whether you are in the right track or you're not in the right track. Because if they give you an offer of employment and then you go ahead and apply and they look at the family composition and see that the family is not earning so much and maybe the wife is not working, they will know that you're just applying for the sake of application and they will likely refuse the application. So you have to be very careful about people who will say they want to give you a job offer, right? So you have to ask these questions. How much are they earning? How much are they earning? And what is the family composition? Can they pay you? Can they pay you? And I will also mention that one of the reasons why this pathway has had so many issues over the years is because of this situation. A lot of people do not have the capacity to pay. A lot of people do not have the capacity to pay the caregivers that they've brought in. That is why there are a lot of people who just came in and they got stranded and they cannot even get their PR. They are just stranded because the person that is supposed to pay them is not able to pay them. Another thing that the employer is supposed to have is a CRA payroll. So they will have to register with the Canada Revenue Agency and have a payroll number with which they will use to pay you. And that is what the IRCC will look out for to check if the person is actually really fulfilling the obligation that they said they would fulfill in terms of hiring you. So all these factors, especially the income of the family that will hire you, both under the support worker and the child caregiver. Now, another thing that you should also know is that a group of families could come together. Let's say a group of siblings could come together and say they want to hire one child caregiver. So for me now, for instance, if I was in Manitoba, because I'm not in Manitoba, I wish I was in Manitoba. If I was in Manitoba, me and my siblings who would have paired up together, like, right? Me and my sisters would have paired up together, say, okay, we want to hire one child caregiver. Even if my own, let's say my own income is not enough, then I can partner with my sister and my other sister and my cousin, and then we'll come together and say, okay, we want to hire one child caregiver that can take care of our children. That's also possible as well. But because I'm not in Manitoba, I cannot do that. So it's out of the game. So if you have people like that, let's say siblings, right, that can come together. I'm not talking about different families. I'm talking about siblings that can come together to hire one person just to meet the income threshold. Then it's also a possibility of getting the PR as well. But like I said, until they make the eligibility announcement public based on the new pilot program, whatever I'm saying right now is based on what was obtainable in the past, right? But some of them can be transitioned into the new program. Some of them, like the major requirement of a job offer, 6 months work experience, language scores, what do you call it now, educational qualifications and all of that, will be transitioned into the new program. But until they make an announcement, and then if you get a job offer from an individual employer, it's also possible, right? But some other details that have not been announced yet, wait, like the employment offer, the form itself, that we need to see the details until RCC makes an announcement that, okay, this is the, what do you call it now? This is the form that everybody should fill. Because the previous form, if you're hiring your sibling, for instance, the question is there. This person that you are giving a job offer to, is this person related to you? That's the employer that is giving you the job offer. The question is there. The person will answer yes. If the person is related, yes. That's why I said, if you have a sibling and the person is hired, has maybe toddlers, and the person is earning very well, the person can actually hire their own sibling to come and work as a caregiver. Okay, so I believe I have provided more details concerning this pathway. And like I said, I will encourage everybody on this live to just wait. The only thing that you could do is go ahead and start looking for an employer, an individual employer. For those who had already gotten an offer from a company, you have to wait until they make the announcement. But for the other ones, like in terms of getting an offer from an individual employer, you can go ahead and look for an individual employer to hire you. But the form itself, that's the offer of employment that the employer has to fill, they have not published it yet. So until they publish it and they provide more details, I would say you should wait for that. Okay, so I would go on to answering your questions now. I'd already spent almost 30 minutes in talking about this pathway and the details. So I'll go ahead to start answering your questions. This question here. So what will happen to those gaining experience that has not been given PPR to gain the required 6 months experience? So that is what I said, that, because of those who came in and they are waiting until IRCC makes detailed announcement. Before, what IRCC does is that they do something like grandfathering. I don't know whether, maybe I should explain what the term grandfathering means. What it means is that if they open an immigration program and there are still some people who could not get their PRO status from that old immigration program before they closed, they will now move them into the new program. So that's what it means. So if you were part of the old program and you could not apply for PR under the old program and they have now closed the old program, it means that they will create a special requirement for you under the new program. Yeah, so that's what it means. Okay, so what's the next question? I think I've already answered this question. The requirement is not yet out, but some of the requirements for the old program will be moved to the new program. I've already answered it in this session. Okay, does work experience as a nurse assistant in hospital qualify for this work experience? Yes. work experience as a nurse assistant in a hospital qualifies for the work experience under the support worker programs. That's the home support worker program, where you're caring for somebody that has maybe special needs, special medical attention, people that have issues medically and all of that. Yes, you qualify. If you are a nurse assistant in a hospital, you qualify. Nurses also qualify. If you are a nurse, you were working as a nurse, and in fact, I need to mention this. There's somebody that I know that was working as a nurse that got a job offer to come and somebody who had an accident. She had an accident that made her incapacitated, such that she could not do anything in her house. So they needed a full-time caregiver to come and be taking care of her in her house. And she was a nurse in Nigeria. She got that job offer to come in to work as a support worker, because she could do what it takes. Like, even if she's not qualified to work as a nurse in Canada, taking care of the person that is incapacitated, she has the competence to take care of that person, because I mean, she could give the person medication, she could give the person injections. That's why I said there is a difference between providing care for somebody who has a medical situation versus just providing care and cleaning the person up. There's a difference. So you have to know the difference between the two, right? But a nurse assistant qualifies. If you're also a nurse looking for opportunity to work as a caregiver, you also qualify in this pathway as well. Okay. I've been a homemaker taking care of children and aged parents. Should this qualify as work experience? If you have been a homemaker, it doesn't qualify. You must at least be working and then be receiving salaries, because part of what you're supposed to submit as proof of your experience is your salaries, right? So if you're a homemaker taking care of your own children, I mean, you do not qualify. You have to show proof of experience, proof of work experience of taking care of somebody else's children. Okay. How about someone who has worked as a crèche assistant in a school? Yes, if you worked as a crèche, if you worked in a crèche, you qualify to work as a child caregiver. What about those supporting the elderly? Is there any chance? Supporting the elderly, it still falls under the support worker program, right? The home support worker program. If you're providing support for the elderly, you qualify. You just need to show work experience. Like, have you been providing support for an elderly person in an elderly home and all of that? Have you been providing that kind of support? If you have, qualify to apply for this pathway. Okay, we don't know yet if they require 6 months of experience. The requirements haven't been. 6 months of work experience is what they announced in June 24. In June 2024, they announced that anybody that would apply for these two pathways must at least have 6 months work experience prior to applying, right? You must have had 6 months work experience within the last 3 years. Your 6 months work experience must have been gotten within the last 3 years. You must have gotten that experience from, maybe you were working in a crèche, working in a hospital, working in a group home, working, like, providing support for people. You must have gained that experience, 6 months of experience for you to qualify. So that's what they announced based on this new program. But more details have not been provided, especially for those who have gotten job offers from a company. If you've gotten a job offer from an individual, you qualify already. But from a company, they have not provided more details about that. So we need to know the information that they will provide based on those who have gotten offers from a company. Okay. Can a child care educator qualify? If you're an educator, so that is subjective, because, I mean, you being an educator, are you interacting with the child directly, right? Are you interacting with the child directly? If you are a teacher, if you are a child care teacher, like you're teaching in a crèche, teaching in a nursery school, then you qualify. Okay. Okay, yeah, that's fine. It's better to know, to get the full details. It's better to get the full details. Okay, what is the income threshold of employers of caregivers in the past? So, in the past, employers of caregivers are individuals, right? Individuals. There is the low income threshold based on the family composition, and there's also the high income threshold. So, low income threshold Family composition, if the family is just maybe a family of 3, father, mother, 1 child, right? And then they earn below $100,000, they qualify. But father, mother, 3 children earning below $100,000 does not qualify, because I mean, $100,000, father, mother, and $100,000, 3 children. How will you be able to pay somebody $15 per hour or $16 per hour, and then you have your other bills? I don't know whether you get my point. It's difficult to, except you have other sources of income. So that's what I would say. Okay. I think I've answered this as well. No, okay, so you have a sole proprietorship business. For a sole proprietor business that is doing something else, it does not qualify. You must register your name. I don't know whether the sole proprietor business is in your name. Is it in your name or it's in another name itself? Is it in your name, like in your own name? If it's in your name, you can use that. But I mean, you would not want to mix up the payroll for your sole proprietor versus the payroll for the child caregiver pathway or the support worker pathway, right? So you have to have a payroll with CRA for the child caregiver pathway if you are hiring somebody for the child caregiver pathway. Okay. Sorry, please, this is what somebody Olaolu said, it will not require a job offer. So how would you now get the PRO, please? Okay. Community website. So sorry, community websites for which one? Your question is not explicit. How about someone who has worked as a, I think I've answered this question. Does a youth support worker qualify for this pathway if organizations are eventually eligible for this pathway? A youth support worker is different from a child caregiver pathway. Now, if you're providing support to a youth, you have to ask questions like, what kind of support does the youth need? Does the youth need a support such that you have to be physically present to take care of that person, feed the person? You know, there are youths like that, right? There are youths that need what do you call it now? Support. They might be incapacitated. They might not be able to take care of themselves physically. Now, if you are working in that capacity, then I would say yes. But if the person that you want to provide support for can actually take care of, they can bathe themselves, they can clean their house, they can dress themselves up, they can do things for themselves, that means you don't qualify. The support worker program is for people who cannot take care of themselves by themselves. They need somebody to help them do things, clean, feed them, give them medication. Those are the kind of support that that they are looking for. Okay, so I'll move on to the next. PFL to submit new employment letter for the Okay, so because you're overseas, right? You got a procedural fairness letter and you've changed employers under the home support worker program. Now, do you have a reason why, like, you must provide detailed reason why you changed employers? Because if you change the employers and you did not notify IRCC, so this is it. This person is saying that she changed them. She has already gone through the program. She's probably applied for PR, not PR. I think work permit, maybe work permit, yes, because the previous one, you have to apply for work permit first. And then when you come in, you get the experience, you apply for PR. Now, if you change employers, did you notify IRCC ahead of time? Or is it the employer that notified IRCC that they are no longer supporting your application? So if you have now gotten a PFL and you've gotten a new employer, just go ahead and submit what you have and explain, right? You have to explain and just be positive that it turns out well for you, because typically if one employer employs you, that means you are bound to that employer until you get your PR. In the process, if you change your employer, that's based on previous criteria. If you change your employer and you have to notify RCC, you have to notify RCC why you change your employer and all of that. And if there is enough details, maybe there was, I'm talking based on people who came in, they'd already come in, and then for one reason or the other, they were experiencing abuse from their current employer, they had to change employers. If they have documented evidence and proof that there was a situation that made them change employers, right? Of course, you can't even change employers like that, because what will bring you in is a closed work permit. I'm talking based on previous criteria. Is a closed work permit. So you have to report a situation of abuse, and then RCC will now give you an open work permit. With that open work permit, you get another employer, and then you continue. But in this case, you're still outside Canada. So, I mean, there is no form of abuse anywhere because you're still outside Canada. So what would be the reason for changing employers, right? If there is no evidence, did the employer just say, oh, I'm not waiting for you again, I am tired of waiting for you, I'm looking for somebody else, right? If the employer said that, that means you have to provide evidence of what the employer said. And if you've gotten another employer, you can go ahead and submit details of the new employer. But in this case, it's quite dicey. It's a dicey situation, and in most cases, it's the visa officer that will determine if they would approve it based on your new employer, or if they will refuse the PFL. Okay, so I'll move on to the next question. I think I've answered this question. I don't know why it's repeating itself. So this question, can temporary residents give job offer? No. Temporary residents, unfortunately, temporary residents cannot give a job offer. It must be a permanent resident and a citizen that can give a job offer. So I think I've answered this question. Students currently working part-time as care workers in Canada do not qualify under the old requirements. They do not qualify. If they make the details of the new pathway, if they say they qualify, fine. But for now, work experience gotten as a student does not qualify you to apply for the caregiver pathway. Okay. So the question I will ask you is, do you have 6 months work experience working as a caregiver? You've already graduated, so that means you're already on postgraduate work permit. Do you have the work experience? At least 6 months work experience. That's what the requirement says. 6 months work experience. If you have 6 months work experience providing care with your PGWP for an individual, you already qualify. They've not mentioned the details for companies yet, so I wouldn't be able to give answers for those who are working for care homes companies. For care homes, like those are companies, right? I can't give you details for that. But if you have experience, 6 months work experience working for an individual as a caregiver in Canada, then you qualify for the caregiver pathway. Can my parents write a work experience reference letter of caregiving to them? Well, if your parents can write reference letters for providing care, it will be suspicious. So let me say this. Please, in whatever you do, do not do anything that will be suspicious to the visa officer. There are things that a lot of people will do that will tell the visa officer that this person is lying, even if you're telling the truth, right? So you have to, even if your situation is true, they will want to see that your parents were paying you salary. Were your parents paying you salary, not allowance? Were they paying you salary, even if your parents write a reference letter, right? Were they paying you salary in your bank accounts? So you have to be careful so that you don't do things that will make it look like you're just packaging. Don't do things that will make it look like you're packaging because you want to go through this pathway. Please. Okay. Can a brother employed full-time be an employer for a sister? All other requirements from old program are fulfilled. Yes, like I said, a brother can employ the sister. I gave an example of siblings. I even gave myself as an example that if I was in Manitoba and let's say my income threshold was not enough, I could partner with my siblings to hire a caregiver. So if you are in Canada and your sibling is outside Canada and your sibling is actually doing the work of a child caregiver or a support worker, and they can provide evidence, tangible evidence. I'm not talking about evidence of, oh, I was taking care of my children. No, that one does not qualify. Or I was taking care of my parents. Yes, you can take care of your parents, but are they paying you salaries? Like, did they hire you? So if you are a brother or a sister, and I also mentioned that on the form itself, on the IRCC form, employment offer form that you fill, they will ask you, the question is there, are you related to this person that you are giving a job offer? So you have to answer yes to that question, right? So you can hire your sibling to come and provide either child caregiver or support worker for your any person that is capacitated. But you have to meet the requirements of the income threshold. If you meet the requirements of the income threshold, it's fine. You can hire your sibling to come and provide care. Okay. For an individual employer package, for instance, if the sibling is the employer, getting to Canada, can I change my job offer after working for my sibling for some years, or is it a permanent job offer? So, because the announcement they made in June was that it's PR on arrival. That's the announcement they made. We don't have any information yet on whether they will change that PR on arrival or it will still remain the same. Now, if you've worked for your sibling for some time, and let's say your siblings' children are, maybe you came when they were 5, 6, 7, and you've provided care for them for 3 years, and they have all grown, they can take care of themselves, they're independent, and you're a permanent resident, you can look for work elsewhere. I mean, nobody's tying you down, right? They've grown, you are a permanent resident now, you can look for work. Nobody will come and ask you questions whether you fulfill your requirement or not. When you have now gained your PR, I'm talking about when you've gotten your PR status, right? I'm not talking about when you are still a temporary resident. If you are still a temporary resident, you have to still be working for your sibling because it will be a closed work permit. I don't know whether they would open it. I don't know whether they would come and say part of the new requirement is that it will be an open work permit for you to work for another employer. But based on old criteria, it typically is a closed work permit, except you have a situation of abuse from the employer, and then you report to IRCC. That is when IRCC will now give you an open work permit to apply for to work for another employer. But if you've gotten your PR, you can work for anybody. Nobody is stopping you. If you want to continue working for your brother, fine. If you want to work for another organization, fine. If you want to go to school to do something else, fine. As long as you're a permanent resident. But if you're still a temporary resident, you will be tied to the employer that brought you in. It's only under the circumstances of abuse that is when you can get an open work permit to work for another employer. Okay. So I'll just answer a few more questions. I have 10 more minutes before the end of this session. What about a care assistant and a senior carer who has supported the elderly for 2 years? Yes, this person, you qualify to work for the support worker program. That's the home support worker program. If you want to get a job offer, look for an individual, look for an elderly person that you can provide support for. And if you get a job offer from the person, you can go ahead. Does primary school teaching experience fulfill the work experience requirement? Yes, it does. Primary school teaching work experience fulfill the work experience requirements under the child caregiver. So if you're working for a school, if you're a teacher in a school and you're teaching at the nursery school level, at the crèche level, at the primary level, yes, you qualify. At the secondary level, no, because that's more advanced, except maybe the person that is hiring you has maybe a special needs child, right, that cannot go to school and needs to be homeschooled, right? Then it's at that level, then you can also say you qualify, because I think it's based on individual basis. But childcare, if you're teaching at the secondary level and then you also have expertise in teaching special needs, because special needs is a different qualification entirely. And let's say this person that you're providing childcare for has a special needs child that needs to be homeschooled, then there's a possibility there. But for the general child caregiver, that's for toddlers, children below 9, 10, and all of that, that needs support and all of that, then primary school teaching experience also qualifies as well. Okay, can I apply with my dependent? How long will the processing time take? Yes, you can apply with your dependent. In fact, typically based on the old criteria, you can apply is a family application that you have to apply with your family for permanent residence. You can apply with your family for permanent residence. You can apply with your family for work permit as well. And the processing time is subjective. I cannot tell you, I've always said it before, that RCC has never stuck to their processing time. They have never ever said, okay, 6 months is 6 months, 5 months is 5 months, and then for me to come and be beating my chest and telling you that yes, 5 months is 5 months. RCC has always been disappointing people in the area of processing time. So anybody asking me question concerning processing time, I am sorry. IRCC has always, 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 always been disappointing people when it comes to processing time, and they don't have a standard processing time. If they process your application and you get it within 2 months, glory be to God. If they process your application and it's taking 1 year, I'm sorry. That is how IRCC is. They've never, they don't stick to their processing time. Okay. So for this question, I don't know which category of school you've taught in for years and what level of teaching you've provided and the employer circumstances. So I also need to mention this. The employer circumstances, like the category of children that you're coming to provide care for, also determines, the kind of experience that you claim to have. So let's say the person that you're coming to provide care for, his children are 5 years, 3 years, 1 year old. And then your experience has always been teaching secondary school students. You don't qualify because, the reference letter that will be provided will be from a secondary school. If you have been teaching secondary school students for the past 3 years, you don't qualify. But if you show proof that you were teaching nursery school students, crèche students within the past 3 years, at least you've had 6 months experience within the past 3 years, then you qualify. But if you've been teaching secondary school students for the past 3 years, that means your work experience does not align with the employer that has hired you. I hope that clarifies your question. Okay. What are minimum fund requirements for an applicant? When you say fund requirement, are you referring to the work permit application or the permanent residence application? Until they announce those details, I cannot give you an answer. I don't want to give you an answer based on last year's requirements, right? Until they announce the details for minimum proof of funds requirements. But typically, if you're coming with a job offer, the minimum proof of funds requirement is quite low for this category, is quite low. Okay. So next question. What of the person that has experience as caregiver to children in the school, like early childhood educator, teaching a crèche, and also working as a counselor? So how do you now convince IRCC that you're actually doing the work of a counselor versus teaching? If your work as a counselor is in another area, let's say it's your own business, right? Then that's fine. But working as a counselor and then teaching at the crèche level in a school, it sends a wrong information to the visa officer. So please, I'm going to say this. Whatever you're doing, put yourself in the visa officer's, immigration officer's shoes. Let's say you are the immigration officer, right? And you are assessing this person. What will be running through your mind? So you have to be careful when you are putting certain things in front of the visa officers. A lot of people don't know that some information that you provide to the visa officers will just automatically send a wrong message. So you have to be very, very careful. I'm not saying you should go and misrepresent yourself. No, don't misrepresent yourself, but try to imagine that you are the immigration officer and you are telling the immigration officer that you are actually a counselor, and at the same time you are also a teacher in the crèche. It's somehow, right? It's somehow. So you have to be very, very careful. If you are a teacher in a crèche, then fine, provide that information of being a teacher in a crèche. Don't go and provide information of being a counselor and a teacher, and then confuse the immigration officer to ask you to provide more proof and more evidence and more documents, and that you cannot provide. So you have to be very careful. And then when they do their due diligence and start finding out information, they will discover that what you've provided was not true. So you have to be very careful with the information you provide to the visa officer. Provide correct information that will not, make them suspicious of your experience, that will not make them think that this person is lying. And then when they do their own due diligence, they will find out something that is different. Okay. All right. I'll move on to the next question. I still have 2 more minutes, and then this session, I'll be ending this session. For languages, CELPIP or IELTS better? For me, I'm leaning towards CELPIP because I feel that a lot of people have been testifying that they've been getting good scores with CELPIP compared to IELTS. So I'm leaning towards CELPIP. If you're an accountant already working in Canada as an accountant and is able to get a job as a nanny but does not have initial experience, can I qualify? No, you do not qualify. You need to have 6 months work experience. If you are already working in Canada as an accountant and you do not have a 6 months work experience as a caregiver, you do not qualify. You need 6 months work experience, 6 months full-time work experience, 6 months full-time work experience, initial work experience to qualify. Okay. With LMIA points taken out of express entry due to corruption, job offer may not be a condition for this new pathway. Sadly, this pathway has nothing to do with express entry. Please. This pathway has nothing to do with express entry. That's why I said in the beginning that people who are even 50 years, 60 years, and I also mentioned 70, but I know that somebody who is 70 years, the person is already old. People who are 50 can also apply for this pathway. So this pathway has to do with express entry, and please don't mix it up. It has nothing to do with express entry. It's an independent pathway. Okay. Is it okay to include both childcare and elderly experience in my CV to source for child caregiver jobs? So please separate it. If you're looking for childcare job, let only your childcare experience be there. If you're looking for elderly care job, let only your elderly care experience be on your resume. Don't mix the two up. You're sending a wrong message to whoever is looking at your resume. And typically, I tell people, it's better to call the employers, not even to send resumes randomly. It's better to call the employers. Okay. Does the work experience from a family I work for currently as full-time childcare worker for counts, plus a certification from Skills Development Council Canada with its references with its reference letter? So work experience from a family you work for currently as a full-time childcare worker. Now the question you should be asking yourself is this family paying you through CRA payroll? Are they paying you through CRA payroll? Do you have a T4? If you've been working for them, for how long have you been working for them? Do you have a T4? Or do you have a notice of assessment from CRA showing that, okay, this family were paying you, and then you included the information when you were filing your taxes? So you have to be careful. If you've been working in Canada and you don't have this information that this family were paying you through payroll, and your information is not with CRA, that means there will be a problem by the time you apply for this pathway. So if you are in Canada, right, working as a caregiver for an individual, the family should be paying you, and their information should be on CRA payroll. If their information is not on CRA payroll, it means there will be a problem by the time you apply for permanent residence. So please be careful when you get an offer of employment from a family, right? If you have 6 months work experience from a family in Canada and you've been working as a child caregiver or support worker from a family in Canada, they should be paying you through payroll. There should be a payroll for it, as in they should have a CRA payroll. If there's no CRA payroll, and if you've worked, let's say, for 1 year and you filed your taxes and you didn't include this information when you filed your taxes with CRA, everything is the way Canada works, everything is interconnected. So there's no way you can just want to circumvent certain things. If they were just paying you through Interac is fine, but were they submitting or were they remitting their payroll, as in remitting EI, CPP deductions to CROA? Were they doing all of that? If they were not doing all of that, then there will be a problem by the time they are processing your application. Okay. So previously said the employer should provide, yes, if you're working for an employer, provide reference letter and a letterhead. For an individual, the individual can create a letterhead for themselves, right? They can put their names, Mr. and Mrs. Lagbaja. We are writing this reference letter for Mrs. or Miss so. She has been providing care for us, blah, blah, blah. It's just an official document, and it should be notarized as well. Because individuals do not have company letterheads and all of that. They can just write a letter to support that. But these individuals must be verifiable. Like they should be verifiable individuals, not people, not just random people. Because one thing about RCC, if you want to game the system, there's something they will do to you. They will ask you to provide certain documents that you will not be able to provide. So you have to be very careful when you're trying to, package yourself in this pathway, that whatever you're doing is credible, such that by the time they ask questions, by the time they do their investigation, you'll be able to provide every supporting document that substantiates your experience. All right. I think I've exceeded my 2 minutes threshold. I just have 1 more minute, and then I'll call this session. I'll bring this session to an end, rather. So let me just answer this one more question. What of someone who has done childcare in Nigeria 2 years ago before relocating out of the country? Can that person use old experience to be successful in this pathway? I said yes. I said at least you must have gotten 6 months work experience within the last 3 years. So if you did childcare, let's say this is 2025, you did childcare in 2023, in 2024, at least you had 6 months work experience in 2023, you qualify for this pathway. If you had 6 months work experience in 2024, you qualify for this pathway. Within the last 3 years, if you've had 6 months work experience, either in childcare or support worker program, 6 months work experience, then you qualify for this pathway. Within the last 3 years, you qualify for this pathway. Okay. I think, let me just take one more question and then I will end this session. Just one more question. One more question. What's the age limit for a child that needs care? That is the child support care. Age limit. The age limit for a child that needs care is subjective. There are some children that will need care even if they are above a certain age bracket, especially if they have medical issues, right? If they have medical issues, they cannot take care of themselves. There are children born with certain disabilities. They use wheelchairs. Some of them, they have to be carried from one place to another, they carried, fed. If there are certain children like that, they don't even fall under the child care pathway. They will fall under the support worker pathway. That's the home support worker pathway, even though they are children. As long as they need care, the care of an adult. Like there was one family in Canada, they did a video, both parents are medical doctors, and they have one child that needs serious special care, right? The child was she had some issues, medical issues, and then because of course they are medical doctors and they needed somebody to be physically present to be taking care of that child. Now, whoever gets a job offer in that category will not be under the child caregiver pathway. It will be under the support worker pathway, because the child, although is a child, the child actually needs more support on the medical side compared to a child, somebody working as a nanny. I hope I'm clear on this. So they will not need somebody to come and be teaching the child A, B, C, D, and all, take care of the children when the parents are not. No, they need somebody that will be there to provide both medical support, physical support, and other kinds of support. So the person that is coming will be under the support worker program, not under the child caregiver program. Child caregivers for people who have children and do not have maybe childcare, maybe daycare is far, there is no spot for daycare. That is an issue in Canada. Like having to get daycare spot. Even me too, I have the same problem. Having to get a daycare spot for my child was a problem. I even did a video about it. Even till now, like where my child goes to attend daycare is almost 30 minutes drive, which does not make any sense. Typically, a child is supposed to like be within 5 minutes or 10 minutes of where the parents reside, right? So for someone like me, if I need a child caregiver, right, then the person will come on that child caregiver pathway. But for people who have children with disabilities, serious medical issues, it will not be the child caregiver pathway. It will be the support worker pathway. That's the home support worker pathway, because that one has to do with people who have medical issues and need support. Okay, so that brings me to the end of this session today. I want to say a very big thank you to all of you who attended. I'm so sorry if I couldn't take all of your questions. Somebody's asking, is there a waiver for language score? No, there's no waiver for language score. You must pass the language requirements, at least a CLB4. A CLB4 is important. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me in this session. I hope that I've provided more clarity. I just want to summarize that IRCC would provide more details concerning the eligibility criteria for this pathway. The minimum thing that you can start doing is at least get your language results ready. The work experience, 6 months work experience, 6 months full-time work experience, and your educational qualifications and certifications and trainings are critical to this pathway, and then you getting a job offer from an individual employer. If you get a job offer from individual employer, you are fine. For those who have gotten job offers from companies, you have to wait until IRCC makes the announcement on who is eligible for those who have gotten job offers from companies, right? So that's the much I can say. In terms of searching for jobs, you can talk to family and friends who are in Canada, especially those who have children, those who have minor children. If you're under the child caregiver pathway, those who have minor children, talk to them. If you have the experience, talk to them. They should give you a job offer. And like I said, the job offer is not somebody just telling you, oh, I've applied, I've given you an offer. No, you have to ask certain questions if they actually meet the criteria of giving you a job offer, because not everybody is eligible to hire people under this pathway. And like I said, somebody who is earning $50,000 and has 3 children plus the wife not working, if the person gives you a job offer, is as good as useless, because that application will not be approved. You know, you have to look at this threshold and ask questions if you're looking for a job. So in terms of looking for a job, where you can look for a job, if you don't want to talk to, if you don't have anybody in Canada, go online. There's the nanny care, there's Canada. I think what I will do is I'll put a summary of some of the websites that you can look for jobs, and then Facebook groups as well. You can go to Facebook groups. You can go to Facebook groups. Facebook, just check for people who are looking for childcare. You can even go there and announce yourself that you can provide childcare. They can, just Facebook groups. That's the much I can say, because most of these people are actually on Facebook. A lot of these individuals are on Facebook, so that's where you can get job offers. You can also get job offers online. Some of them they have companies, child caregiver companies that are hiring, support worker companies that are hiring. But like I said, if you get a job offer from a company, you have to wait until IRCC makes the announcement. Let them make the announcement of how you qualify before you tell yourself, okay, that you're actually eligible for this pathway. So until then, thank you so much for joining me in this session, and hope to see you on my next live. I don't know if I'll come on live next week Sunday. I'm thinking of coming on live kind of, will I say, maybe twice a week or 3 times a week, because I feel it's easier for me to just come on live and talk than just sit down and create videos. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just thinking of that. I'm just thinking of that. If I should come on live twice a week or 3 times a week, and then that saves me stress of creating a video, editing, and uploading the video. Anyway, I'll think about it. But hopefully next week Sunday, I'll come on live and we'll talk about other immigration pathways. Thank you so much for joining me today, and have a beautiful week ahead. Thank you so much. All right, bye. Okay, so somebody asked question if I will have another session. Yes, once RCC publish the details, I will have another session. Once they publish the details, I'll have another session to provide more clarity for people. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.